Hi everybody, it's Adam from Pixel, and if you follow my channel, you'll notice that I already uploaded a video. I already uploaded my behind the scenes episode this morning. But after receiving several comments, I'd say the first 10, 15 comments that I received all kind of said the same thing with regards to my video. And that was, one of the particular apps that I was reviewing wasn't really fairly reviewed because I really ran into a lot of technical issues over the week, of 3 days of technical issues that I couldn't solve, that really just got on my nerves at a certain point. So I thought I would make that part of my review in comparison between that one and this one we're going to be looking at today. But as far as I've heard from a lot of my listeners, and thank you by the way for your feedback, it might have been exclusive in my particular case. A lot of people had asked me if it was the most updated version of it, and yes it was, because it was unless they've updated it this week, I ran into a lot of glitches. I don't think it's an update issue, and yes, of course, a lot of different apps have learning curves and stuff like that. However, without mentioning the other one, because I think it wasn't fair to, I think from my side of things, I don't think it was fair of me to full out, bash this particular app, because it's been a professional app used by many people for a long time. It served people extremely well. So I'm going to leave that be as far as that goes. I'm not even going to mention it in today's video. You'll know which one it is if you saw the one that I already pulled down. But instead, I'm going to focus on probably what I feel is an extremely newsworthy realization I made in the production of the video. And that is that this app, Autodesk Sketchbook Pro, went free this week. It was already pretty cheap. It was already 32 bucks, 32 bucks a year, American, I think, for a license, for a year license, which is absolutely dirt cheap. So access to all of these amazing features, but what they've done is they've made it completely free to everybody. Originally, the original version of Autodesk Sketchbook did not include the Pro features, which really is, to me, what makes this app worthwhile. That's the reason why I use it in the first place. So the fact that they've made this free to the public is definitely newsworthy. So I'm going to give you a tour of these particular features. I think it's absolutely amazing. And I'm also going to show you how I use Sketchbook Pro, Autodesk Sketchbook Pro, in tandem with Photoshop and other reference apps that I use, all right? So that's what we're going to do today. Now, with that said, without mentioning the other app, again, I don't want to shine a negative light on any app in particular. That was the mistake I made in the first place. But in my defense, at least in terms of my final opinion, design-wise, I find that Autodesk Sketchbook Pro, when it comes to technical assistance, perspective guides, ellipse guides, primarily, there's other assistants as well, but for me, those two particular features, Autodesk Sketchbook Pro is the all-around best one. As far as perspective alone, just something that assists you in drawing quick perspective, 1, 2, and 3 point perspective, I still believe and still feel that Procreate for the iPad Pro and now for the new 2018 iPad, I find that really is the first place winner, but Procreate lacks an ellipse guide, which I'm sure they'll be integrating sometime soon. I think the design and functionality of it is the best to date, but you have to have an iPad for it and you're working on a smaller screen. If you want to work on a desktop, I find that Autodesk Sketchbook Pro, the cleanliness of the design, the intuitiveness of the design, the ease of use, compared to these other ones that I've looked at, this one really takes the cake as far as that's concerned. And it came to my attention in researching it that Scott Robertson, the alpha technical artist, the kind of the grandfather of technical art to a modern day grandfather as far as that goes, assisted in the production of this. So that's no surprise because it's such a beautifully clean design. And really, to me, this is an example of how these types of technical features should work. We're artists, we want to jump in, be able to figure things out very quickly and just jump into drawing. We don't have to spend 2 weeks learning what this means and that means, because it's not really going to serve us. 99% of the population are not going to be able to benefit from this. So you want just something that just works beautifully. All right, so I'm going to give you a tour of this. And like I said, if you look here on my screen, now that you're looking at my screen, you can see that it went free. Now, it's free. It's 85 bucks, I believe, for a commercial license, which again is a joke. That's fraction, it's a fraction of what a single user license would be, but you get access to all of these pro features. Now I've looked everywhere for where I can make a payment, because it wasn't clear if this was exclusively for students and teachers or not, but I'm looking for a payment page to download it, and there's no such thing. Anywhere you click, if you look here, click here on the screen on subscription, quick tour, news, it's free. So there you have it. So let's have a little quick tour of not all of Sketchbook Pro, but just primarily the technical tools we'd use for completing a drawing, okay? So first off is the ruler tool. So if you look here, if I want to move the ruler around, I can move it here. Now, on your screen, the actual ruler line itself might be so faint, it might be difficult to see, and that just might have to do with the screen itself and how the screen capturing software picks this up. But from my perspective, what I can see here, and you might be able to see it on your screen depending on the resolution of your screen, there's a nice faint, very clean line, very unintrusive. And you'll see that even when I'm drawing, that line disappears. So if I move it over here, it always calculates between these two dots. I'll move this dot over here, move this dot over here, and draw my line. Really beautiful, nice and clean design. And it's really to the pixel. Those tiny little dots give you a lot of precision as far as that goes. So really nice. Now, if I want to go into perspective, or I can also hit the P key, P for perspective. We can start with 1 point perspective over here, and you can see that grabbing this and dragging it will both affect my horizon line and where my vanishing point is, this little dot here. That's my vanishing point over here. And I'm going to create a box. Now, if I scroll around, you're going to notice that my Z-axis, my depth axis of my three-dimensional cursor here, it's interactive. It's actually following the cursor. So it's giving me a nice, all that I need and nothing more, nothing less, visual guide to let me know roughly the direction of that line, so that when I move my hand knows which way to go. Now, as far as the X and Y axis, the vertical and horizontal, they're going to remain vertical and horizontal because this is 1 point perspective. So those axes are not affected by that. I can do a little transparent box here, like that, as such. Nice and clean, and there you have it. Okay, excellent. Now let's look at 2 point perspective. So here, I'm just gonna zoom out a little bit. Here we have our vanishing points, and I'm gonna have one over here. I'll move one way off my page. If you want to move it further off the page, you can just zoom out. You can move this as far as you want. Usually if you don't want anything that looks too fisheye, you want to have your vanishing points far off the page. And I can also move, if I wanted to create a little bit of a Dutch angle to my image as well. I can do that as well. And notice that it has a nice little snapping feature once I get to a nice horizontal. So it's not going to just sit there floating. I won't have to fidget around with it too much to get it where I want it. And I'll create a nice three-dimensional box now with 2 points of perspective. And you'll notice now that my X and my perspective line is now being followed. Okay, you can see that now it's a three-dimensional box. We can see how that cursor is following 2 different vanishing points. Okay, there you go. Now, of course, my vertical axis, my Y-axis, is not moving because it's 2 point perspective. Once we get into 3 points of perspective, that will change. So here we go. I'm just creating my little boxes here. And I always know exactly where my cursor is supposed to go. Oops. Yeah, let's do it like this. Okay. So you can see my box over here. I can do another one down at the bottom, like that. There you go. And I've always got perfect perspective. Really nice and intuitive design. I love this. Okay. Now 3 point. So you can see the design itself is, it's pretty self-explanatory. It takes literally 2 seconds. You just open it up and you're good to go. Now, being 3 point perspective, I'm going to want my horizon line to be way up high. And again, I'm going to snap it here and I'll zoom out like this. I'll move my third vanishing point down here. And now you'll see that all of my cursors are moving. Now we're working with a full 3 points of perspective. And we're going to do a little skyscraper up here. hear a hawk outside. There we go. This is a nice road passing through it. There's our street and our sidewalk around the corner. There we go. That kind of idea. Now, I also have access to ellipse guides. So I can click on the ellipse guide. This will affect the width of my actual ellipse. This is the scaling of the ellipse itself, and this is the rotation of it. Pretty self-explanatory, right? And again, when I draw, that guide disappears. So if I come in here and I want to do something like a hubcap or something like that, come in here, oopsie daisy, like that, and draw my ellipse. And I can move it up, scale it down a little bit more, and there you go. Move it over here, scale it up, rotate it, widen it. When I just said that, I thought of one of my ex-colleagues. He used to say, if you use a one-syllable word and put the word it after it and say it with a little bit of a raunchy sounding voice, you can make anything sound dirty. So if you say bite it, eat it, lick it, that's going to stick with you forever, by the way. As you can tell, it's stuck for me. Yeah, it's got to be a one-syllable word, and you've got to say it like that. That's very important. There you go. Let's grab that ellipse. So there's my ellipse guide. So let's put all of these together. All right, we'll create a little structure here. So let's create a little three-dimensional. Let's go with our 2-point perspective. And what do you want? Oh, my Apple Watch is telling me something, and I don't care. So here, I'm going to create a box like that, from the side of some rectangular shaped building in perspective like this. There we go. We want to find our center line, so I'm going to create a ruler, and I can just move those dots right to the corner. That's why it's important when you're doing a perspective guide. If you want to be very accurate, you got to make sure to go all the way to the corner, like I didn't do. So let's go back to my perspective and finish this line off. Clean that up a little bit. There we go. Go back to my ruler. Remember, notice it always remembers my last setup for my perspective guide. No, let's go back to my perspective again. Fix that line. It's so bloody easy to use and so clean. I love this kind of stuff because you have too much visual clutter. It's just going to interfere with the whole process of creating a piece of art, right? So now I'm going to create a bit of an archway. For any of you who watched my original upload, you're like, this looks familiar. There you go. Create some thickness to the walls. Here we go. And I'm going to grab my ellipse guide. So the first thing is I'm going to play with the scale of this. So scale it up so that the middle line and the top of my ellipse line up properly. I'm going to rotate it like this, and then I'll scale the width of it. Move it over a little bit, scale it so the width lines up with my guides there, and like so. And we're good to go. Then leave my mark. Move it over. Same idea. Scale it down. Well, first scale it the height, then scale the width. Go. And much like Photoshop, for instance, if you're working in something like Photoshop, which was integrated in the latest version of Photoshop, you have line smoothing. So I can get a little bit of a smoothing effect. You can control the smoothing here using the slider. Now notice if you go a little bit too high with smoothing and you start to make sharp corners, because there's so much of a drag, unless you're going very slowly and carefully, you risk creating hard corners like that. So I prefer to keep my smoothing down to, let's say, under 50 especially. If I'm using smoothing at all, but one of the things I explained before in my other video, which you're not seeing because I took it off, I personally like to control my own line. And it's just something you have to learn. You have to learn the muscle, you have to, the hand-eye coordination, you have to train the muscles of your hand, how to use your arm to be able to draw a nice controlled arm. So I'm not the type of person who's going to use line smoothing often. I like to have imperfect lines, or if I want to create a nice smooth line, I use my own training. I like to train my hand to do this because this gives me specific control over my line rather than having that generically perfect looking line. It personalizes it a little bit more, okay? But in this particular case, we'll go for a nice line smoothing like this, and it controls not only the smoothness of the line itself, but the beginning and the end of that line as well. So how it falls off at the tip, the nice controlled beginning and end like this. Now, I would turn smoothing off because I want to practice getting nice controlled lines myself without it. So it's all about two things. Number one, being careful how you start it. Sometimes we start a bit flimsy and get into a controlled line after, and also be careful how you end the line. A very common way to ruin a nice line is to flick it off at the end accidentally. You end up with this kind of like flimsy flick off at the end. So you want to control your pressure all the way through and gradually release your pressure when you're letting it go to create a nice controlled end and beginning and middle. And you also have predictive stroke. Predictive stroke meaning it is taking a guess at what your intention was, what kind of a curve you're trying to do. And once you release the line, it autocorrects it. It creates a nice smooth curve to it, in most cases. So like for instance, if I'm drawing here, if I do a curve, if my curve's not smooth enough, it's going to fix it for me. See, if you look closely, you're going to see in certain cases that it's autocorrecting. But in my particular case, my curves are pretty smooth already, not trying to pat myself on the back, but if I was creating a little bit less of a controlled curve, it would probably correct that a little bit more. But it's a little subtle assist. Let me see if I bump it up to 5, if it corrects it even more. All right, bump it down. Let's see what happens if I do this to 2. Okay, 2 seems to be a stronger correction. There we go, okay? So you can see it gave it a little bit of a correction so that I would have a nice smooth oval shape. There, okay? That kind of idea. You also have access to mirroring features. So if I move this over, I can create a mirrored image like that. I can use for different purposes, or even vertical and horizontal if I wanted to make some kind of a pattern. I don't personally see much use for this. This isn't something I would use a lot necessarily, but it's there if you need it, and I'm sure you can find some creative uses for this kind of a feature. I find it a bit of a novelty, but it's definitely something you can play around and have fun with as far as that goes. You can even do something like this, where you can get a nice floral design. That just saved me about 6 months of work right there in 14 seconds. And I have predictive line on it too. So notice that it auto-corrected it after the fact. So I went like this, and watch when I let go, boonk, it gave it a little bit of a smoothing and correction to it. There you go. So you can combine these different tools together. It is free. And it is an absolutely beautiful app to work with when you're working technically. Now, how would I combine this all together? How would I use this together? Well, when I'm creating three-dimensional architecture, if I'm trying to design something, whether I'm doing a crypt or a graveyard or a scaffolding or a building or a car, whatever, I'm referencing things. So one of the things I would definitely want to use is go into one of my apps over here, go into my PureRef app, and grab a different ref. So here I've got my cemeteries. And I would open it up like this, and I can flip through the different images like that. And I would use this reference as my guide and draw based on that, so that I have all of the subtleties of the architecture, the proportions, the design, how the foliage and the staircase fits into this archway, that type of idea. So I have all of those references there, and I plan my image, at least the technical side of my image, in Autodesk Sketchbook Pro 2018 at the time of this video. And once I've got that framework, I bring it into Photoshop and I do the rest of the drawing in Photoshop with all my favorite brushes and that kind of stuff. All right, so thank you again. If you already saw the original upload of this video, thank you once again, of course, for joining me. Remember, I have my online mentorship, Lucid Pixel. You can check out all of the information in the description below, as well as my behind the scenes videos, just like this one, every Monday. You can check it out here on my channel. The Brush Sauce Theater Art Contest with myself and Tyler Edlin every month. You don't want to miss it, and anybody and everybody's welcome to join in. It's an awesome amount of fun and a huge community, so you don't want to miss it. All right, happy painting, everybody, and take care.